Hello everybody, Dork Skeleton here, and in this video we're going to be covering 10 of the most underrated cards in Hearthstone. When I choose these cards, I'm looking at both constructed play and arena play, and naturally these are my own opinions, so you're free to disagree in the comments section if you'd like. Number 1, Ancestral Healing. This is one of those cards where you wouldn't put into a deck normally because it's a very situational card. However, if you really think about what it actually does in the situations where it can be played, it's quite insane because it's a 0 mana spell. I think one of the real reasons this card just doesn't see play at all is because very high-end shaman decks with big minions just isn't something that's viable at the moment. However, I think it's undeniable that if you do have this situation where you have a big minion that ends up low on health and then you buff it up with full health and taunt again, that is way more valuable than simply a 0 mana card. But I will say that if you do happen to get a massive amount of value on a minion that was already on the board, what are you going to spend the other 10 mana on in that turn? Still, given that the card never sees serious play, I'd say it's an underrated card. Number 2, the Argent Watchman. A 2 mana 2/4 that can't attack unless you use a hero power to inspire it to attack this turn. While it's definitely a slow card and your opponents may just ignore it, you can use the stat advantage on this card in order to make good trades over the course of the early to mid game. This is especially true in arena mode where your curve may not be perfect and your card quality might not be ideal. The Argent Watchman is actually pretty decent at making trades. In some ways you can think of it as a bad zombie chow because although your opponent can ignore it initially, it's likely to get you a card advantage over the course of the game. Number 3, the Coliseum Manager. I think this card is actually quite good in arena mode because of its potential to get you so much value. If you're playing a class that only uses its hero power when you have a filler turn and you're not under any pressure, like let's say a shaman or a warrior, then you don't have to be punished by the fact that it has that inspire effect. You can simply have it hit the board, maybe make a couple of good trades, maybe it dies, and maybe you return it back to your hand to replay again when you're going for the value approach rather than board tempo. In slower arena matches, people often underestimate just how much value you can get out of a Coliseum Manager, and for that reason, I think it's an underrated card. Number 4, the Felguard. While Ascension's Shieldmaster is undeniably better in most cases due to its Battlecry effect, I think people take a look at this card and say, oh man, I would never play that, not even in arena, not even if I drew it, because losing your mana crystal really sucks. However, let's say during the arena drafting process you undervalue your taunts so much that you choose something like a random 1/1 over a Felguard, you might get punished for that later on, because a Felguard is a solid body which can save your butt. Losing a mana crystal sucks, but if it's on the later turns, then the actual impact of it may not be that big. If you play it on turn 10, there is actually no impact, it's just a 3 mana Ascension Shieldmaster. While it's not a top tier card, it's also not atrociously bad, and I think people give it a bit too much of a bad rap. Number 5, the Gnomish Experimenter. People really don't like it when one of their big minions gets turned into a 1/1 chicken, and understandably so, that can kinda suck. And you definitely wouldn't put this in a super control deck, because of course you can't deal with the RNG. But in arena mode, and for decks that maybe play a lot of spells or just don't care too much about their minions, then the Gnomish Experimenter isn't actually that bad of a card. Remember, drawing a chicken is better than drawing no card at all, and if you compare it to an Acolyte of Pain, technically the Gnomish Experimenter does have the bigger and better body. So while it doesn't have potential in a lot of constructed decks, it's also not a bad card, and for arena, it's actually a pretty decent pickup. Number 6, the Ice Rager. Now, this card was never intended to be an extremely great constructed card or anything like that, but compared to a Magma Rager, a 5/2 is actually a lot better than a 5/1. An opponent mage can't simply Fire Blast this once and take it off the board, and if anybody does play a 4-drop into this, more than likely an Ice Rager can trade up. If you play the Ice Rager onto a board that you have control over, you can either get a very good trade, or deal a lot of damage to the opponent's face. And yes, while 2/5 or 3/4 is generally going to be the better pickup, 5 damage to the face is nothing to sneeze at, and a trade up onto a Chillwind Yeti is also nothing to sneeze at. Number 7, Mind Vision. While this card doesn't gain you a card advantage over your opponent, what it does give you is insight into what kind of deck your opponent is playing. Many times if you're playing a priest deck without cards like Zombie Chow, you wouldn't have a turn 1 play anyway, so by playing Mind Vision, you can figure out more or less exactly what your opponent is playing, and you might even get one of their clutch cards, the ones that are really important to their deck that they don't want you to know about. The value of this card is all about the information you gain on your opponent, and that's something that is often underrated inside of Hearthstone. Number 8, Sense Demons. In a class like Warlock, it seems a little bit silly to put cards into your deck that serve like Arcane Intellect, being able to draw cards into your hand for 3 mana. However, this card is actually not as bad as it seems. There's 2 things going for this card really. The first is that you don't have to pay a health cost to get those cards, and the second that this is a very selective card draw from your deck. Say that you only have 5 demons in your deck, 2 of which are Void Callers and the other 3 of which are big ones like Jaraxxus or Mal'Ganis. By playing Sense Demons, you're not only very confident about which cards you're going to be pulling, but you're almost guaranteed that those cards are going to synergize with each other by the Void Caller being able to bring out your Jaraxxus or Mal'Ganis straight onto the field. Now maybe that's not enough to make it into constructed play at the moment, but I definitely don't think it deserves the trash tier that most people seem to assign to it. Number 9, Shadow Bolt. This is maybe one of the cards that actually does get some respect from the community in playing decks like a Malygos Warlock, since it will see occasional play, but I think a lot of people still underestimate it. This is a card that for 3 mana does deal 4 damage to a minion, and that's really not bad. It's not like a Lava Burst where you have a 2 Overlord drawback. It's pretty much guaranteed to kill any other 3 drop and many 4 drops as well. As far as magic-based removal goes, especially considering that it's in a class that has weak spells and not many removal spells like this, Shadow Bolt is actually pretty decent. Number 10, Windfury. I remember this card being occasionally played back in the day when Leroy Jenkins Windfury decks were a thing. However, this card has really fallen way by the wayside, and I think pretty much everybody forgot about it and the potential that giving a minion that's already on the board Windfury really has for you. Say you had a Fireguard Destroyer or something like that on the field, you managed to get lucky and hit 6 or 7 attack. If you follow that up with a Windfury on a future churn and you just swing at the face a couple times, you just added 6 or 7 damage to your total damage dealt. Outside of the aggro shaman decks that play a lot of very weak minions, this card actually has a lot of burst potential. If you have the right minion on board and it survives on the churn, or heck, if you just have any solid minion that survives a churn, you can really punish your opponent with Windfury, especially if you can combine it with a Rockbiter weapon. According to Hearthstone, the number of shaman decks built with Windfury in the last 30 days, 5%. Remember that the most flat damage you can get out of a 2 mana spell without Overlord like Crackle is 4 right now from a Heroic Strike, so with Windfury having more potential than that, 2 mana does have the potential to do an insane amount of damage if you have the right setup. So that's all for my current top 10 list on the most underrated cards on Hearthstone. Of course, there were other cards which were strong candidates for this list. If you feel that some should have definitely been included over other ones that I mentioned, feel free to let me know down in the comments below. And aside from that, I've been Doug Skeleton, so thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.